Hey, everybody, welcome to FL Teams Live. We are here to give you the FL Teams NFL Power Rankings after week two. I'm Jeff Macolino. This is my buddy Jeremiah Hensley, two contributors here at FL Teams, and two of the six voters in this week's NFL Power Rankings poll. Jeremiah, you ready to dive right into it?
Let's go, man. There's a lot to unpack. Nothing like some overreactions after week two. So let's do it.
Right. There's crazy overreactions after week one and maybe crazier overreactions after week two.
Yeah.
Let's dive in. We start from the bottom. The number 32 team in the FL Teams Power Rankings are the Carolina Panthers. Starting off 0-2, the Houston Texans come in at number 31. At number 30, another NFC South team, the Atlanta Falcons. At number 29, one of the the biggest fall of any team this week in the power rankings, the Indianapolis Colts come in at number 29. The Tennessee Titans, another AFC South team, three of the bottom five AFC South. The Tennessee Titans, after getting just curb stomped by the Bills on Monday night. The Washington Commanders come in at number 27. 26 is the Seattle Seahawks, and the victorious, miraculous New York Jets come in at number 25. I think the team in this group of eight we need to focus on is, like I said, the Indianapolis Colts. I think I had them fifth in the preseason in my power rankings. I thought they were going to really compete for the 1 seed because they had such an easy division. Turns out they just might be an easy stepping stone in that division for, who knows, another team like Jacksonville, perhaps.
I have a hard time with the Colts because, I way had them high ranked and thought that Matt Ryan they could finally catch that lightning in a bottle, right? Phillip Rivers couldn't do it. Carson Wentz couldn't do it. Matt Ryan. But, man, there's a chance, and I started looking at some numbers. I'll throw it out this way. Because in one of my fantasy drafts late, I took Matt Ryan, just figuring he was going to be. And then as I'm struggling with quarterbacks, I'm looking at the waiver wire. And so I'm looking to compare guys. You know how I feel about this one particular quarterback. And this one particular quarterback has very similar numbers to Matt Ryan over the last 2 years. And that quarterback's Jared Goff. Jared Goff has thrown for as many touchdowns, fewer interceptions, more yards. So maybe Matt Ryan's still riding that code of what it was, or maybe it's the Colts getting started slow. I feel like they do this a lot. They always struggle with Houston and with Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville knocked them out of the playoffs last year.
Right.
But, I think also I'm taking a big hit on the Panthers. I was really high on the Panthers starting in week one. I still kind of hold that true because I don't think that division is super strong. But I think – Carolina, I thought they'd be better, so it's really odd to me there. I think if anything, the Texans might be ranked a little low at 31. No respect. They're the Rodney Dangerfield of football. Davis Mills just keeps putting in work and no respect.
I caught a little of their game against Denver, and look, they weren't expected to be close in that game, and they were, but God, they look so bad on offense. Yeah. It was just like I don't see this team. I mean, they will battle the hell out of you, but I just don't see them winning late games, which I think frankly was a problem last year for them. Is you need to score down the stretch. The winning teams do it. Losing teams can't.
Well, but we forget a little bit too. They're young, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking Davis Mills in his second year, you're talking Damon Pierce coming in. He finally had his little coming out party in week two. Young playmakers. I mean, Brandon Cook's not super old. So this is a team that's probably rebuilding to get through that. Now, surprising, the Titans. The Titans offense has looked completely inept. And, I mean, we see that. And maybe this is the year that the stack box catches up to King Henry, right? I mean, maybe he just you can't overcome this anymore.
I was talking to another voter in this earlier about the Titans, and this is why when they traded AJ Brown to the Eagles, I was just like, this is so stupid and so bizarre because you need him. You need a star receiver so that people respect your run game. And I translate that to the Colts too.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Taylor getting going. That Michael Pittman, their best receiver, didn't play in week 2. Maybe we're overreacting, but I'll say this. We had 6 voters. The highest place the Colts got in the poll is 26th. I mean, that's really low considering how high many of us were about the Colts going into the season.
Yeah.
And a lot of us even overlooked their week 1 tie as a week 1, new quarterback, all that kind of stuff. And maybe we punished them because maybe we overreacted a little too much because they made us look bad.
I think we might have. I think everybody might have, because at the end of the day, I still have a really hard time looking at that Colts team with that talent, with that coaching staff being in the bottom quarter of this league. I just don't. I don't think that's how it's going to play out. There's 17 games. There's a long way to go. So, I mean, I think this was probably a pretty nice overreaction for us to throw them down that low. But if you're going by what you've seen on the field, that's what you got to go on, right?
Yeah. And look, here they're a half game out of first place. There's no team in the NFL more than 2 games out of first place right now.
That's it.
That's the truth. Even the Panthers and Falcons are only 2 games out of first place.
And this is a league of momentum.
The division's like, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
100%, man. I think the Commanders, I wonder about their offense all the way around. I mean, we know Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz, but really, I just don't think they have a running game that really solidifies anything. And their defense hasn't been as good as what you would expect.
No.
With the guys that they had coming through, you kind of thought the defense was going to keep them close in these. So that's been a little unusual. The Seahawks and the Jets being down there, that's sort of expected, right? I mean, we know where they're going to be. Again, pile on the Jets now. When Robert Saleh says he's taking notes, right? I mean, he's going to have a little book, but I'm telling you, the Jets are going to be scary in a couple of years.
Yeah, and they play hard for him. They really do. Let's go to our next quarter, number 17 through 24. Number 24, the Chicago Bears. Number 23, Florida's own. First place, Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 22, the Cleveland Browns, who somehow blew what seemed like a 2-0 start. The Pittsburgh Steelers come in at number 21. Number 20, a surprise 0-2 team, Cincinnati Bengals. Number 19, a surprise, probably. We'll talk about it. Number 19, the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 18, the Dallas Cowboys. And number 17, America's sweetheart, the Detroit Lions. So let's talk. I mean, first, we've kind of touched on the AFC South a little bit. The highest team in that division is ranked 23rd in our power ranking, so that says something. But the Jaguars, who were 32 last week in this poll, rise up to 23. It wasn't a close game. I mean, that's the thing that's kind of stunning to me. They played a very tight game against Washington, but I think we all think Washington's a mediocre at best team. But they just beat the hell out of the Colts. They looked good. And I mean, Doug Peterson, I think I said in one of our shows in the offseason that he was my favorite hire out of the bunch. I think he's a tremendous coach. Trevor Lawrence, got his boys in first place. What do you think?
I think the NFL, you see the big disparity between like college and the NFL. Some colleges are just going to be more talented than other colleges, and they're just going to steamroll them no matter what, right? When you get to the NFL, the talent level, even the massive talent level, isn't that massive, right? So the reason I say all that is it's crazy what a little bit of motivation and belief can do. And, I'll touch on it a little later when we talk about my experience from Sunday, but a little bit of faith and a little bit of trust and belief can go a long way. Jacksonville's talented. They're young. And I think we talked about that. And when you see guys like Trevor Lawrence starting to key in with Christian Kirk, and you see the defense making plays, and, all of the draft picks that they're making are doing that. And Doug Peterson, I was sitting just 20 minutes south of Lincoln Financial Field, when I saw Doug Peterson ride faith and belief in Nick Foles to a Super Bowl. So when you get a team that's close enough in talent, you can out desire, you can out motivate, you can out hustle and play, especially early in the season. But it's scary. I mean, if a team like that starts to believe in themselves, who knows, man? That division is wide open.
Absolutely. And it's not crazy to think they legitimately could win that division with what we've seen. It's look, the AFC South might not have a team that ends up with a winning record. That's a possibility. But they still get to go to the playoffs, the winner of that division. Why not Jacksonville?
Happens to the NFC East every other year.
Yeah. Right? The NFC East is so happy for the AFC South right now.
And I think, look, the Steelers, I feel very confident in what I said from the Steelers from the very beginning. Mitch Trubisky, we know who you are. We've always known who you are. So at this point, you really do have to ask, when do you just put Kenny Pickett in? I think of the rookie quarterbacks, he's the most likely. You just need to give this guy the reins because you literally have nothing to lose.
Yeah, give him some.
Cannot be worse than Mitch Trubisky. Your offense cannot be worse than it is. So just give the guy the reins. The sooner the better. Put him under fire. I mean, Trevor Lawrence took a beating in his first year, but year two, he took a step. So, I mean, I think they got to get the ball to Kenny Pickett soon. The Bengals, Joe Burrow's going to get killed.
Well, the Bengals, they're a shocking 0-2 team to me. I kind of differentiated when I said it. They played the Steelers and the Cowboys without Dak Prescott, and they are 0-2. Now, great, they are one game out of first place in the AFC North. Take it with a grain of salt, but you're right. He's going to get killed, and I thought those two games were, gimmies almost. You got to win those.
We thought we saw this in the playoffs in the Super Bowl. We said, if you keep Joe Burrow clean, you got a chance every game. He's not staying clean by any means. And the flip side of that is they can't run the ball. So Mixon's not getting involved the way that you'd want to. And they spent a lot of money on that O-line. I mean, last year you could look at it like, oh, well, they didn't draft Penei Sewell. They passed on these guys for position players, but they spent a lot of money on that O-line. And unless something drastic happens, I called it when we talked about the Super Bowl. I said, we could be watching the beginning of a dynasty for the Bengals, or we could be watching the beginning of the greatest ESPN 30 for 30 ever made. And it might be the 30 for 30. I mean, because this team is not going to take losing and losing bad in a good way. I think they will start to eat themselves. The big personalities of Joe Cool and Jamar Chase, when everybody's winning, everybody's happy. When people start losing, that's an interesting chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Raiders 0-2, they're our highest rated winless team. And, they blew a big lead against the Cardinals, but the Cardinals were a playoff team last year. It's not like they blew a game against a backup quarterback of a pretty mediocre team like the Bengals did. And week one, they played a close game and lost to the Chargers. And then, again, they lose in overtime to the Cardinals. I'm not done thinking the Raiders might have a shot to compete this year. I think they are a talented team. They've had a tough schedule to start the season, and they lost two close games. They didn't get blown out. They were in both games. Frankly, they blew what should have been a blowout on Sunday against the Cardinals. I didn't particularly like the holding call on a fourth down to give the Cardinals another chance to tie the game, but that's another story.
And
promise not to talk about the refs.
And then if we go to the Cowboys, surprisingly, they did not look bad with Cooper Rush, but they were playing what we're seeing is a really bad team. The Cowboys are interesting to me for this reason. It's a changing of the guard, I think, that needs to take place, but it's a little hesitant to take place. Now, I'm not saying Dak needs to go away and Cooper Rush needs to come in, but they shipped off Amari Cooper, right? Then it's kind of CeeDee Lamb. But if you look at the two running backs right now, Ezekiel Elliott is not the best running back on the Dallas Cowboys. He's not by a long shot. Tony Pollard catching the ball, running the ball is way more explosive. that, it's a weird, but how do you handle that? And is McCarthy the guy who's going to be savvy enough to handle those reins? And is Jerry going to leave him alone long enough to do it? But as long as you got Micah Parsons, man, you're going to compete. That guy is just insane.
He is a game wrecker. Just individually, he can just ruin your game plan on offense.
Unbelievable, man. And then, and you said it, it is the America's sweetheart, but Detroit, man, I'm not like, I love Dan Campbell. Always loved Dan Campbell. I loved him when he was the tight ends coach and the interim head coach. And this is another team that's young and might just start to believe. All right. Swift has looked like maybe the best running back in the league. Swift has played out of his mind. Amon-Ra St. Brown has really stepped up. Jared Goff's not making stupid plays. Aiden Hutchinson had started coming through and making plays on the defense.
That was big to see. Yeah, he got 3 sacks.
And so, again, young teams that start to believe that you can do what that crazy man at the front of the room's telling you can do. I hope Jared Goff makes me eat my words because I'd love to see Detroit win that division. But, that's a long, long way away. But I like him.
I'll tell you this about your favorite quarterback, Jared Goff. In the FL Teams Fantasy Football League, I am 0-2 with Aaron Rodgers as my starter. If I had started Jared Goff both games, I would be 2-0. By the way, 4th in points out of 12 teams and 0-2. That's why I hate fantasy football.
Hey, you know what? While we're on Detroit, that's actually pretty funny to see. Have you seen the stuff going around with Amon-Ra St. Brown? Like it went a little viral that somebody drafted him for their fantasy football team, and they sent him a DM, and they basically sent him the speech from Remember the Titans, where they're saying, like, if you drop a ball, you're going to run. If you do this, you're going to, if you fumble, I will break my foot off in your John Brown hind part, whatever. And Amon-Ra, they were basically saying, congratulations on getting drafted to XYZ team. We have a few rules that you need to go by. And he reposted it. It was like, and now he's like playing along all time when he's like catching the ball and didn't fumble. He's like, no chance I'm running a lap, coach. Like I like it. I like that he's having this interaction, man.
Yeah, he seems like he's an interesting dude too. From again, the first time I watched Hard Knocks ever, I'm like, Dan Campbell, I'll check it out. So I fell into the trap just like most of the rest of America, I suppose.
No, is Amon-Ra, is his brother Equiminius?
Yeah, in Chicago.
Man,
yeah,
that is some interesting. Just wow, like
yeah. It's unfortunate watching the Bears-Packers game. It's unfortunate his brother doesn't have a quarterback who can throw the ball.
Yeah, that's craziness.
All right, let's move on to number 9 through number 16. Number 16, the Super New York Giants, 2-0. Number 15, the Denver Broncos. They had quite a range in our voting ballots. Number 14, the New England Patriots. Number 13, the biggest riser from Week 1's power rankings, the Arizona Cardinals. Number 12, the New Orleans Saints. Number 11, the Minnesota Vikings, who had the biggest spread of any team. And let's see here. We got number 10, the San Francisco 49ers. 40 numbers. And they're an interesting one, too. And number 9, the Baltimore Ravens remain unchanged after their heartbreaking loss to the Dolphins. This group of teams I just read off, I think had the highest range of best ballot, worst ballot of any group. This is like the teams that are not sure of their identity. From the Vikings through the Giants, each team had a 10 ballot gap between their top and bottom. The Cardinals had 7, but those are pretty large gaps between the top and the bottom ballot. The Minnesota Vikings, though, I said they had the biggest. They were as high as 8th on one ballot, as low as 20th on another ballot. let's talk about them, because I did talk to the voter who had them 8th, and he said, look, they beat the Packers. He put the Packers 10th on his ballot. They lost to the Eagles. He put the Eagles 6th on his ballot. I'm like, I can't argue. I mean, it's and that's not why he ranked them there, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I can see it. They looked dominant defensively, I would say, against the Packers. Jefferson went off. They looked pretty putrid against the Eagles, but I think I was somebody, I'll say it right now, it certainly looks like I was somebody who underrated the Eagles going into the season. I know in our preseason power rankings, that was our biggest gap.
Yeah.
I had them 16 and you had them like 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think I was probably wrong about the Eagles. So I'm not one to overreact to the Vikings being 1-1, frankly, with a tough schedule.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, the Vikings, Kirk Cousins is going to have a couple games every year where he's Kirk Cousins, right? He's going to throw more balls to Darius Slay than he does his own receivers. It's going to happen. But the bigger thing that I think Minnesota got handled, but I give more credit to that to Philadelphia than I do as an adverse to Minnesota, because the way Minnesota came out and approached that would be what you would think was the blueprint, right? Against the Philadelphia offense. And that is you drop back in a lot of shell, cover 2, cover 3, quarters, whatever you, and make Jalen Hurts beat you underneath. Make him sustain long drives throwing from the pocket. And they did that, and Hurts did that, right? So that's where I think the Eagles took another dimension, where last year that may not have been the case. The Eagles may not have been able to sustain a drive consistently that far to score. So Minnesota, I think they're still going to be, ranked up high. The Cardinals, man, as soon as DeAndre Hopkins gets back, who really knows? I mean, Kyler Murray really does just become video game at some times. I mean, it's unbelievable. But we know my feelings on Kyler. I think it'll all burn at some point. Patriots, I think the Patriots are bad. On our list, the way that they go up, I would definitely, I think the Broncos are better than the Patriots. The Saints, I'm not going to hold too much against you in a rivalry game with no Kamara. I was kind of shocked you guys didn't use Taysom Hill a little more. I kind of thought that maybe he would be involved in the game plan a little more.
Today, he was limited in practice today with a rib injury, so I'm wondering if that might be why. But I certainly thought they would give more Taysom Hill snaps as well. And on the Saints, I got to say this. This is they range from 9th to 19th on the power rankings, which I think is totally appropriate because they've got a top 5 defense. They didn't give up anything to the Bucs.
Right.
Nothing. The Bucs took a 10-3 lead on the Saints. The Saints were down 20-3 a few minutes later, and you know how many yards the defense gave up? 0. 0. That is the Jameis factor. That is, he just gave them 10 points. And look, the Saints played I mean, Mark Ingram's having ball security issues all of a sudden, which he had early in his career, and they went away. And now, if he doesn't fumble the ball at the 10-yard line, the Saints are going to take a 10-3 lead, and I don't think it's even close. But but again, Jameis is the quarterback. And I know there's some Saints fans who are already saying, well, let's go to Andy Dalton because this defense is so good. You just need a quarterback who's not going to give the game away. I don't know that Andy Dalton's that quarterback necessarily, but I can understand the game plan the Saints brought into that game. I certainly can understand the logic of I said this on Twitter. If Taysom Hill started the game instead of Jameis, the Saints win that game. Do I think that's the right move? No. But I'm saying for the game plan where you're going to try to win 9-0 like you did last year against the Bucs, which was the game plan, like it or not, that's the guy you go with, not the guy who anytime you have a guy running deep, he's going to try to score a touchdown. It was bad Jameis in the fourth quarter, and Bucs fans, they know what it is.
I think you're going to be Jekyll and Hyde all year, I think. But you're in a division that'll allow you to do that and possibly still make it into the playoffs. And I think if things right themselves and it comes together, Jameis puts together a streak of stuff, you're very dangerous. I mean, a lot of weapons, but not having Kamara really changes everything, man. I mean, he really is the cog that makes that go. So I'm not penalizing the Saints too much for that loss. The 49ers, talk about fucking hero to goat, or goat to hero is, everybody was like, oh, you got stuck with Jimmy G. Well, thank God they did, right? Because Trey Lance is showing what Trey Lance has always shown. I think I heard somebody say a stat somewhere since his junior year in in college, that he's thrown a total of 149 balls. He's not healthy ever. And, again, he goes down, and this is a mobile quarterback, leg injury. It just doesn't bode well. And we'll see if Garoppolo steps in and does what Jimmy G does and keeps them competitive. I don't think the running backs are the same as they used to be there in San Francisco. And the defense has something to be left to. So I think the 49ers are going to drop a little bit.
Yeah, they had actually one of the smallest. They had the smallest gap in this middle quarter of teams. They were between 8th and 12th on every ballot. And I even made the comment talking about them. They moved up because Trey Lance got injured. And I hate saying it that way, but I'm like, this is a better team with Jimmy Garoppolo. That's the fact.
Well, it's just what
today,
you said.
This season, they're better with Jimmy.
Well, and that's the Saints argument, right? Are you going to manage it and play good defense and have a couple of explosive playmakers, or are you going to have that chance for the dynamic but disaster looming? I will tell you this, man. I despise all things Baltimore and the Ravens, but Lamar Jackson is something special. I mean, I'm not breaking news with that, but he's actually standing in the pocket and making throws now, and using his legs not just to run, 79-yard touchdowns, which he still very much can do. But I was surprised at Bateman coming on and playing well. I'm interested to see what they look like when J.K. Dobbins gets back, because nobody respects Kenyon Drake as they shouldn't.
I was going to wait until our top 8 to talk about it, but something that stood out to me in that Ravens-Dolphins game is I thought these two teams both played defense.
Yeah.
Apparently not so much. That's a little bit of I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a concern on both sides. I give all credit to they've got strong offenses. I'm not taking that away, but I feel like especially Baltimore, where as the weather progresses, those games lend themselves to defense later in the season. I don't know if Miami has any late road trips to Buffalo or New England or New York. That could be a problem for them too, potentially. But yeah, I expected, a 24-21 game.
Now, well, here's what I did. Look, the Dolphins defense right now is playing without Byron Jones. So he's on the pup. So he's gone for 2 more games. So we've been circling in at the corner across from Xavier between Nick Needham and an undrafted safety who we just call KK at this point because it's Kakoi, Kakaku, something. I don't know. But so we've been rolling out that. But it was troubling to see what happened with the big explosive plays early. But what made me feel good is about midway through the third quarter, there was complimentary football being played. When the offense scored, the defense made a stop. And in the fourth quarter, if we bend at all on any one of those drives, outside of holding Stover to that deep field goal, that comeback's all for naught. So the defense stepped up and made plays when it needed to and got off the field on 3rd and 4th downs. So I think that was a big step for them because, Baltimore exposed the speed over the top was really troubling. And we haven't gotten pressure. That's the other part. The Dolphins are not getting pressure. Not to Mac Jones, not to Lamar Jackson. We just haven't. And if that happens this Sunday, it's going to be a long, long Sunday.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the top 8 because we got a couple of big time matchups here in the top 8 in week 3. The Green Bay Packers come in at number 8 after their rebound. The Los Angeles Rams come in at number 7 after what was really a close game against the Falcons that people maybe I don't think people realize how close that game was. Uh, number 6, the Philadelphia Eagles. We already mentioned their great Monday night performance. Number 5, the Miami Dolphins. Number 4, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They actually fell from 3 to 4, which is just a weird oddity, but it's because what happened with the two teams ranked 2 and 3. The Chargers are number 3 after their close loss to the Chiefs, who are unanimously number 2 across the board, and the Buffalo Bills unanimously number 1 across the board. The Chiefs went from 4 to 2, and the Chargers kept their spot at 3, so that's where the Bucs, that's how these power rankings work. It's not, I don't think anyone was penalizing the Bucs, but it just so happened they fell. Let's talk. I mean, we've kind of started talking already about the Dolphins. Let's talk about those Florida teams. The Bucs had the opposite issue of the Dolphins. The Bucs defense looks legitimately scary good. You can make excuses that the Cowboys aren't that great and the Saints, shot themselves in the foot, but they're scary good on defense, it appears. But offensively, they really did nothing. I mean, Leonard Fournette, I think, averaged 2 yards, not even 3 yards a carry. And he had a lot of carries. Tom Brady, barely over 50% passing. Didn't look sharp. Julio and Godwin were out. Mike Evans, cheap shot artist, loser Mike Evans, got himself kicked out. Though that was their biggest play of the game because he got the Saints' best defensive player out of the game, Lattimore. And that's who his replacement is, who Brady scored the only touchdown pass for the only touchdown for the Bucs offense in week 2. So the Bucs, I think, have some, they're going to need to win low scoring games, kind of like Tom Brady did when he was the game manager quarterback of the New England Patriots in the early 2000s. They kind of had the opposite of the Dolphins, where it's like, hey, we can win shootouts.
Which I have never, man. I mean, this is the most explosive team that I've ever seen on that point. On the Bucs, but here's the thing. I feel like this is the way it is with the Bucs. This is a team that has been there, and they've done that, and they're led by the greatest in the game to do it, right? So I feel like as the season progresses, they're only going to get better as they get healthier. Their offensive line is beat up. Fournette is always a slow starter. It's the reason Ronald Jones kept a job in Tampa for a long time. They call him Playoff Lenny for a reason, right? Fournette gets picked up as the season keeps going. And the receiving core is already banged up. Julio, Russell Gage hasn't been completely healthy. Godwin's out. Now, next week, you're going to be without Mike Evans because of that hot-headedness. So they're filling themselves out and finding it. I think it was telling that last week the receiving core was in such shambles that Brady went to Scotty Miller. And he loves Scotty Miller. He does. He finds Scotty Miller on those that he becomes his safety net, a less talented Julian Edelman. But I think Brady and the Bucs are weathering some injuries early. And as they get healthier, they'll get scarier because that defense is flat out legit. And if you do that, you're going to stay competitive. For Miami, I told you, man, and I said it in my Fins in the Sea. I was lucky enough to be there with my little guy. And, I try to be a loyal fan, but literally as the fourth quarter starts, I'm trying to explain to my 6-year-old that, hey, we don't get a touchdown here, buddy. We're out of here, right? Like I couldn't take it anymore. From the MVP chants to the move those chains and the camo and it was awful. But that offense, like, it showed something that just I haven't seen. Not even in the Duper and Clayton days. Okay. Duper and Clayton, that was a lot of Marino arm talent. But dude, this is quite possibly, I won't even say possibly, the Dolphins are the fastest team in the NFL. That's where I'll put my flag easy. Between Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, it's a track team. Like that's a 4x100 right there. That's at least I'm calling a bronze medal, maybe more. That's a 4x100 relay. Those guys can move, and you just can't account for all of them, right? The first half, Tua looked really bad, but I loved Mike McDaniel's press conference, and it wrapped it up for me when they said, "What do you think about the fourth quarter?" And McDaniel's words coming through were, "Well, now maybe Tua will listen to me." And they said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Look, it's great to want to be a perfectionist and to always want to make the right read and the right throw and all of those things. But realistically, that's not going to happen. So if you can just get better at one thing every week, then you're going to end up pretty good by the end of the season." And handling the adversity, that the first half could not have went worse for Miami and for Tua. You can bullshit around and say that first pick was Tyreek's fault, but no, because the ball should have never been there. From where I'm at, I'm watching this, and you had options outside of that Tua just never made it to. He forced the ball into Tyreek, then he panicked, then he threw it over the top and gets interception number 2, turns into 14 Baltimore points. Everything could have fallen apart. But when they started to believe, right? When they started to believe, and they realized like, oh, wait, our guys are just faster than they are. And then all of a sudden, Tua, it's like you could see the robot broke, right? He became a quarterback. He started moving in the pocket. That Tyreek Hill, the first bomb that he threw, that was Tua taking 2 slide steps to the right. If Tua doesn't feel that pressure coming off the side and he stays right where he's at, he's getting hammered. That's another pick. Tua, sensing that, sliding that 2 yards to give himself time to make that throw was huge. The touchdown to Gesicki, right? And I'm stealing it from Matt Hasselbeck, but I love the way he said it. That was an us or nobody ball. When Tua threw that ball, it was Gesicki or nobody, and that was by design. The ball that he threw to Waddle, the game-winning touchdown, that was an us or nobody throw, and he used his feet to get him open to do that. If Tua plays smart like that, throws with accuracy, gets people open, uses his legs to prolong plays, the touchdown to River Craycraft, again, rolls them out and hits them on the run. If Tua's doing that, this is a tough team to match up. I don't know how you do it, because if you stay that shell underneath, they can still catch you on a slant and make a move and take it to the house. And then even though we didn't run the ball that great, near the end, Chase Edmonds, when you're all of a sudden rolling your safeties back, Edmonds rips off a 25-yard run in the fourth quarter because he's blazing fast too. So to watch this offense come together like that was phenomenal. And I hope it wasn't lightning in a bottle. We're going to see what it's like this week. I'm not going to be unrealistic. I think it would be a very tall order for us to beat Buffalo. I want to be competitive because Josh Allen has absolutely just beat the shit out of us since he came in the league. But I think Miami's offense, I've never had an offense like this. And if the defense gets stronger and healthier as it goes, I can't even say it. They're in the power rankings in the top 5. That's what we'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, across all the ballots, they were 4th or 6th. I mean, that says what we think of them. The Chargers lose. They stay at 3, which I think, my God, that game, I've seen this a little too much with the Chargers the last couple of years, where I've seen this too much in the NFL in general. Don't get me started on Denver. That's why I have them way lower than most people, because their coaching situation's a mess where you can't manage a game. And the Chargers, they inexplicably, look, everybody watching on TV could see Gerald Everett make a catch, get down, waving to come off the field, hands on hips, breathing heavy. And they decide this is the time to go hurry up. Sure enough, they throw to Everett, who's, out of gas. Look, he didn't make any effort. If he had, if he was at 100%, he probably catches a touchdown pass, but he doesn't even make a play on the ball, gets taken back for pick 6. And I'm sitting on my couch and thinking, this team has 30 coaches? Not one guy can say, hey, slow it down. He needs a sub. Not one guy can I don't know. I'm obviously not on the sideline. I've never been on an NFL staff, But there have been this year more than any in the first 2 weeks that I've actually been able to remember and just go crazy about. There have been a lot of boneheaded game management situations from the way the Saints managed the clock in week 1. Everything the Denver Broncos have done completely. Like, it seems like this guy has never watched a game of football, let alone coached one before. And then the Chargers.
You bring up an interesting point. The Chargers, this isn't new. I mean, I think since Staley's been there, this has kind of been a thing of questionable, going for it or going for 2 and not kicking. And
a timeout against the Raiders when they were trying to tie the game so they both could make the playoffs.
They could both make the playoff. Like, game man, these younger coaches that are coming in that are dynamic and offensive gurus and all that stuff, sometimes they forget the fundamentals. And I really do believe that, right? They don't think about those situations. I don't know about our evil genius in Miami. Mike McDaniel seems to have come from the Shanahan tree, right? So, I mean, he seems to be under that tree of understanding and realizing what you do well and who you are. The Chargers, though, I feel like that happens a lot, man. Poor game management and coaching. And I don't know what it is about it. I just I think they're good, obviously. I don't know. I got a weird feeling about them. I don't know.
I think this is a weird off-topic thing, and I don't think McDaniels. I don't think he fits in the category. But there's a surge of little coaching boy geniuses, offensive gurus who think they're the smartest guy in the world. Yeah, they are the offensive genius in the league. And obviously, one of them just won the Super Bowl, so it for some people it works. I still don't think he's that, I think they got some midseason acquisitions that kind of put them way over the top, personally.
Look, I'll give you Mike McDaniel's boy genius, right? And his boy genius was when they asked him about the turning point. He called it, I'll keep it PG for us. He said, well, I think it was really important when we just ran that FU play or F it play. Right? F it is what he basically said. He didn't say just F it. He said that's what they're going to run. And that play was basically, hey, our guy's faster than their guy, so he should just run way down the field and you just chuck it up. And that turned into a Tyreek Hill for his second touchdown, right? That was, I'm not going to overthink this thing and get fancy. I'm going to say Tyreek Hill's just faster than your guy. So go and let's just throw it. Right. And sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. And, so I do think some of these guys outcoach themselves. The Chiefs are interesting to me too, man. Is Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to finally be who we thought he was? And who really is the go-to receiver there? I don't feel like anybody right now, but then when you look back at it, even before Tyreek and when Tyreek was busting out, there were times Mahomes threw, to 9 different receivers. And
I think he might just be that good that he doesn't need a number 1 receiver. I mean, look, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, you could argue neither one of them. Late in Brees' career, he got Michael Thomas.
Well, Brady, outside of Randy Moss, I mean,
which was his best offensive seasons. Obviously, came with Moss, but. Yeah, I guess in Tampa he's now had probably the best receiving core since aside from the Moss years.
Yeah,
excuse me. But yeah, I think Mahomes is just that good, and he also is the luckiest quarterback in the league. I swear to God, watching that game Thursday night, I was talking to somebody on Twitter, and I'm like, I could have sworn Mahomes threw like 4 picks. He's like, yeah, because Samuel dropped 2 in his hands. They got 2 interceptions called back on penalties, but the only interception in that game was the pick 6 that Herbert threw. I'm like, man, that's but every year I remember seeing on Pro Football Focus, Mahomes leads the league in dropped interceptions.
Yeah,
it just I at a certain point it's just something that is. It's not luck. It's just for whatever reason teams can't pick them off. I mean, they do pick them off, but. Not, they drop a lot too.
Look, this is going to sound like sour grapes, and I get it, and I know all of that, but I am going to say that I think Justin Herbert gets a pass on a lot of things. Okay. Meaning he's got unbelievable arm talent. Okay. But I'm struggling to remember, and I haven't watched all the Chargers games, so please point it out. Where's his statement win? Like where's the game that Herbert took over and said, like, I'm going to make this play, right? Because I do kind of remember a few more that are Herbert throwing the pick six going the other way, right? And I just and this is why I say sour grapes. I get all that, and I'm a little sensitive, but I do think back sometimes of like if Tua would have thrown 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and then his last one would have got picked and ran back the other way for 6, then the conversation about Tua all this week would be how he's not the guy. He's not a talented enough quarterback to do it in this league. That, this is why they need to, quarterback's going to hold him back, right? So it almost seems like Herbert gets a pass a lot of times. He can make some mistakes that don't quite get beat the way other people do. And I mean this in the highest praise and regard. He could end up having a very Marino-esque career, which is floating near the top, being very talented, team scoring points. But where are the championships? He didn't do it in college, same as Dan. Not doing it, I don't know. We'll see. I think he's extremely talented, and maybe he'll take the next step. But, I think I have yet to see that game from him.
Yeah, I think your point is somewhat well taken in that we just, not even that game, but I mean, obviously it's his 3rd season, so he's young. They haven't made the playoffs yet. We haven't seen him in a big game. They did have one against the Raiders where he led a great fourth quarter drive to tie the game, but they lost. Yeah, I'm not putting that all on him, but they lost that game and didn't go to the playoffs. So it is, the big time moment. He really hasn't had it. And I don't place all that blame on him because, again, if their coach didn't call a timeout, they would have been in the playoffs. He would have had a big moment or an opportunity for a big moment against, I don't remember who they would have played at this point, but it's putting maybe putting a little too much praise on him a little early might be the best way to.
Well, and I think again, this
PC wise,
you're hearing a sensitive person's view on this, and the reason that I am is because being, a Dolphins fan, of course, I've seen this just battering of Tua that I've been a part of. I've done it myself, right? But I've also heard it coming from Philadelphia because I'm in Delaware, and I hear it on Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts takes a beating the same way. Right. And like any little mistake that those guys make seems to get overanalyzed to such a point where I don't feel like there's a lot of scrutiny on Justin Herbert. But that all being said, he's a prototypical quarterback. There's not a hell of a lot to scrutinize. The guy's got a cannon in his arm. I mean, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying, some of those big game moments, you just wonder, is he going to be able to do it?
Will he come through? Yeah. No,
right.
I get you. Looking at these power rankings, just like last week, we have 2, top 8 matchups, both featuring Florida teams. The number 4 Bucs play the number 8 Packers. That's a fascinating one. And the number 5 Dolphins play the unanimous number 1 Bills. Out of those 4 teams, there's only one that I think will have maybe somewhat of an overreaction if Sunday's game goes bad. And that's not either of the Florida teams. Look, I don't think most people, including probably yourself, expect the Dolphins to beat the Bills. Not the way the Bills have looked. So I don't think we're going to see them tumble if they lose a game, even by a good margin to the Bills. The Bucs, they're without Mike Evans, Godwin. Who the hell knows when and if Julio Jones is going to see the field? Because I said it when they signed him. You're not signing Julio Jones. You're signing, the artist that used to be Julio Jones.
Fragile.
But the Packers, I think, are the team that they get their butts kicked by the Bucs. They're going to say, "What? They beat a crappy Bears team. They got their ass kicked by the Vikings." I'm curious how Rodgers is going to hold up. I think the Packers quickly recovered in the voting for all of us, because it's like, yeah, they lost 38-3 last year to the Saints in week 1. They were the number 1 seed in the NFC. We're not going to overreact to a bad week 1 for a team with a bunch of nobodies at receiver and one of the greatest quarterbacks, reigning MVP, who played even worse last year in week 1 against, well, maybe a slightly better defense than the Vikings. That remains to be seen. So I think the Packers have the most potential to soar or crash out of that group. If they go in there and lose by 20 points, I mean, they're in that chunk of teams where they, 9-16, where it's like, we don't really know what they are,
Yeah, we're going to be interested to see what their offense is. I think last week against the Bears made more sense to me, because if you are going to look at their offensive side of the ball and who are going to be your playmakers, I think A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are those guys. So now you've got to find a way to keep them involved and really ride that until these young receivers hopefully progress throughout the season. But again, they're kind of blessed in the sense that in the NFC, all these NFC teams can jockey a lot easier, right? Because the whole conference is kind of in shambles. Who really knows? I mean, there's a handful of really good, but outside of that, there's a whole lot of jam-packed in the middle. Even after 2 weeks, if you're Las Vegas, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but
it's close.
I mean, you got to come through that division, and in the AFC, like, that's a hell of a hole, right? I mean, so I think the Packers could right the ship. I don't feel good about them, but good quarterbacks find a way to win, and we'll see how that goes. But I mean, those are two unique teams to me, because I do think maybe even in our rankings and in some of the rankings that you see across the board from pundits wherever, there's still a lot of weight that goes into the name Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. If we removed those names and just looked at these games, right, the quality of team that they played and how they fared or how they looked, I don't know that we're saying that Tampa Bay is the third or fourth best team, right? I mean, yeah, they won, but I mean, these weren't dominating by any means. And defensively, yes, but there's a lot of struggles in Tampa. And I think the same with Green Bay is, do we, it's still Chicago. I mean, we got fooled when Chicago beat Trey Lance in a monsoon, but still Chicago. And so it's interesting. I think a lot of weight goes on those names. Rodgers and Brady carry a lot.
You're right, and I don't know what the Packers defense is. They talk a lot about how revamped they are. All I saw is any time that the Bears decided to let David Montgomery run the ball, they were gashing the Packers. They just insisted on trying to have Justin Fields pass, and he just doesn't seem to have it. Not yet. I thought I saw some flashes last year that maybe he could break out. He looked awful. I will say this: Aaron Rodgers to me looked almost perfect for what their game plan was. Like he showed you he's not going to put up MVP numbers this year, but he showed you why he's so valuable. Tom Brady is, he's nothing more than a game manager. He's just so smart. The difference between Brady and Winston was on high display, where Brady was throwing the ball away a second before pressure was going to get to him, because he knew it was going to get to him. Not that he was afraid of getting hit. He knew that when you're getting hit, it's hard to throw the ball away.
Right.
So you'll see their right tackle getting pushed into his lap, and he's spiking the ball between two receivers 5 yards down the field, because he knows if I get hit, I might fumble. The throw might, I might not get. And Jameis Winston sitting there in the pocket and rolling into sacks a couple times. It's like, but Aaron Rodgers, I think, is still dominant. He just doesn't have weapons in the receiving game, frankly.
But and this is the thing: is if you're Green Bay and Tampa, that's why I think it's interesting to see it in Week 3. Is as the season progresses, Brady and Rodgers will make receivers better, right? What the Packers receiving core looked like in Week 1 by the middle of the season is going to be completely different. Are we going to see another Devontae Adams come out? No, probably not. But do I think Alan Lazard staying healthy can become a serviceable wide receiver? Do I think one or two of those rookies, right?
Yeah, I
that they
like
will
Dobbs.
bring in, right? Dobbs or even Watson, like, will they start to make a few more plays, right? And then I also think the name that keeps sticking in my head with this is, look, you got me with Fragile. I'm going to get off of Julio. I liked him in week 1, but I think Russell Gage, as the season goes on, I think Russell Gage could become more and more a part of what Tampa does. And he's not going to need that when you have a healthy Godwin and a healthy Evans. But adding that third piece to it, I think Russell Gage is playing with the best quarterback he's ever been. And Brady understands strengths and weaknesses, and I think Rodgers does as well. Yeah. How do you put someone in a situation to succeed? Right.
Well, they'll need that third receiver next time they play the Saints, because Lattimore shuts down his son, Mike Evans, just cold every time. This year he gets to shut him down 3 games because he went and got himself suspended. So sorry, Mikey.
Oh.
And I can't end this broadcast without bringing up a quote from Pro Football Focus's podcast. I guess I'll paraphrase it, but he said, Tom Brady was acting like a madman on the sideline. He was going nuts. He's like, frankly, Tom Brady was being a little bitch.
Look, didn't he break an iPad last year there?
He threw one again this week. Brady, he threw his helmet. He threw an iPad. He's screaming. Yeah. He's the one who started the whole brawl. He's the one who started the whole thing. Yeah, I wish Lattimore had put him on his ass, although Lattimore would probably have been suspended for more than one game.
Look, I'm going to throw this last piece in because I did my fins in the sea with it. We know about the Dolphins, do everything else. Isaac and I are going to do something with the Bills. I'm going to tie this in a nice, pretty little bow with what I just said with Rodgers and Brady. What I think more than anything is that Mike McDaniel has created an offense that is tailored to the strengths of what this quarterback does well. It's accuracy, it's anticipation, and it's speed. There's a lot of motion involved to create mismatches. And, that in itself is, I think, it sounds weird to say, but sometimes we think talent overloads stuff, right? Like, look, Arizona gets by on Kyler Murray just being better than the other people. He just has that video game mode that he doesn't have to outthink them or outsmart them. He's a freak. But when you put people in a situation to succeed, we saw what Brady did with the guys in New England. We saw Jimmy Garoppolo and how, when the right situation, San Francisco can become that way. I have a lot of faith that that's what Miami's finally done. I think they've got belief and trust, and I think they created an offense. And as long as Armstead stays healthy and that offensive line holds up, who knows, man? My buddy who's doing him and his wife do the Married with Picks podcast on FL Teams. He's an Eagles fan. He threw down a bet. I think he got like 135-1 for a Dolphins-Eagles Super Bowl exact matchup. So if it's Dolphins-Eagles, he's going to get like 135-1 or something silly like that. It would be great, but I'm excited, man. I'm liking where we're at, and we'll know a lot more come next week.
Yeah. This is a show me week here in the NFL.
This season's been fun, man. There's a lot of ups and downs, and we still don't really know. I mean, look, we do try to look at it. I know with 17 games now, it's hard, but we used to be able to look at it in 4 quarters, right?
Right.
Now, we're halfway through the first quarter right now. It's a lot of football left.
A lot.
And, I think teams like Cleveland, who are perennially kind of low right now, I thought Cleveland would be much more of a dumpster fire without Deshaun Watson. And they've made it through the 2 games without Deshaun. They could be really scary when he gets back and healthy, because their division now looks like trash. I mean, Baltimore's probably going to be better, but I mean, Pittsburgh's awful. The Bengals are 0-2. I mean, the Browns could still come out of this thing smelling like roses.
Yeah, it's I said it earlier. No team is more than 2 games out of first place. Anyone can still come in and surprise, because 0-2 teams have won the Super Bowl before.
Hey, I hope that this season never settles down. I don't want it to fall into the mundane and the humdrum. And we know that, 10-point spreads are going to be the norm. You know what I'm saying? I want this every week to be what it is. Like, let's have parity and let's just have these games back. It's amazing, man. It's really been a lot of fun. And I hope we can keep that momentum.
Yeah. Yeah. And so quick shout out to not only Jeremiah and myself, but to the other voters, Vincent Shockley, EJ Farbman, Isaac Edelman, and Wonder Boy James Macolino. Look at all this mess. All of these ballots. So thank you all for
Big thanks to you, Jeff, for spearheading and putting all this together. I'm not good with Excel. I would be a mess in this thing.
Yeah, I'm sure if someone watches this, they'll be like, you can do that much easier than the way you have it laid out there.
And if so,
I'm welcome to that feedback, folks.
Yeah.
So yeah, stay tuned to FL Teams. Jeremiah mentioned you got the Bills Dolphins preview coming up a little later. Fins in the Sea just came out today. You'll get a Bolts and Bats in the Bay if I can bring myself the energy to talk about the slumping bad Tampa Bay Rays. Talk about limping into the postseason. But stay tuned to FL Teams. We got all your professional and college sports teams covered. And every Wednesday night, we will bring you the FL Teams NFL Power Rankings. See you next week.
See ya.